Little MAGA girl was bullied by leftist over her Trump shirt. But Wuti Vet ran in and said, "Subscribe to the channel right now to find out the end of this epic story and comment below which part of this great America you are watching from." The alarm clock buzzed at 6:30 a.m., a shrill sound that sliced through the tranquility of Sarah's bedroom. The golden autumn sunlight filtered through white curtains, illuminating a space that served as a last refuge of normalcy in a world that seemed to have gone mad. On the walls, there was no propaganda, no screaming activism. There were posters of classic rock bands her dad listened to, framed family photos, and a small Bible on the nightstand. Sarah, 14, rubbed her blue eyes and sat up in bed. She wasn't a warrior by nature. She was a girl who liked sketching, apple pie, and listening to her grandparents' stories out on the porch. But the times demanded that even children wear armor. She walked to her closet. Her fingers glided over the hangers, passing grey hoodies and neutral blouses, the uniform of invisibility that most of her classmates adopted to survive the social jungle of Lincoln High. But today, Sarah's hand stopped on something different. She pulled out the white t-shirt. The fabric was soft, but the image stamped on it weighed like lead and shone like gold. The face of Donald Trump, smiling, with the American flag in the background. Below, in bold letters, "Keep America Great." Sarah held the garment against her chest and looked in the mirror. Her heart raced. She knew what this meant. It wasn't just cotton, it was a target. "You can do this, Sarah," she whispered to her reflection. "It's just a shirt. It's our president. It's freedom." She pulled the t-shirt on. As she did, she felt a strange mix of fear and electric pride. She was connecting to something bigger than herself, a lineage of patriots who did not bow. She brushed her blonde hair, tied it in a simple ponytail, and grabbed her backpack. Before leaving, she looked at the photo of her grandfather on the shelf, in uniform years ago. "For America, Grandpa," she said, closing the door to her sanctuary. The yellow school bus smelled of diesel and cheap disinfectant. Sarah sat in the first empty seat near the window, hugging her backpack against her chest to partially cover the shirt's print. She wasn't ready for the confrontation yet. She just wanted to get to school in peace. Around her, the hum of teenage conversation was white noise made of trivialities and the repetition of slogans heard on TikTok. Sarah looked out the window, watching the suburban houses roll by. American flags fluttered on some porches, but they seemed less frequent than she remembered from her childhood. 2 rows back, a group of boys laughed loudly, mocking a conservative video on a phone. "Look at this guy talking about borders, so cringe," one of them said. "Literally a fascist," another replied, using words he probably couldn't define but had learned to wield like a weapon. Sarah clutched her backpack tighter. She felt like a spy in enemy territory, the bearer of a dangerous secret, love for her own country. The loneliness was palpable. She wanted to turn around and say, "It's not fascism, it's security." But she knew she would be swallowed by the pack. Silence was her only defense in that moment. The bus stopped with a hiss of pneumatic brakes in front of the imposing brick facade of Lincoln High. What should have been a temple of learning resembled more a fortress of conformity. As soon as Sarah descended the steps and stepped onto the asphalt, the air changed. There was static tension in the atmosphere. She took a deep breath, straightened her back, and in a gesture of silent bravery, relaxed her arms, letting the backpack slide to her side. Trump's face on her t-shirt was revealed to the daylight. The effect was subtle at first, but undeniable. A girl with blue hair, leaning against the gate, stopped speaking mid-sentence. Her eyes dropped to Sarah's shirt and narrowed in a mix of disbelief and disgust. She nudged the friend beside her, pointing with her chin. Whispers began to spread like poison in water. "She's got nerve, or she's stupid," someone muttered. "Who lets their daughter leave the house like that?" another voice echoed. Sarah kept her gaze fixed on the horizon, walking toward the double doors. Her legs trembled slightly, but she forced a steady pace, left, right, like a solitary march. The main hallway of Lincoln High was a visual cacophony. The walls, which once displayed academic achievements and sports trophies, were now plastered with ideological posters. "Dismantle the system," read a red and black poster. "Silence is violence," screamed another in block letters. There were flags of every possible color and cause hanging from the ceiling, creating a low, oppressive canopy. Sarah searched with her eyes, desperate for a point of familiarity. Finally, she found it. A small U.S. flag, dusty and forgotten, tucked in the top corner of a bulletin board, almost covered by a flyer about climate justice. The metaphor was too clear to ignore. America was being pushed into the corner. Sarah walked down the center of the hall, the stream of students parting around her not out of respect, but as if she had a contagious disease. Social distancing here took a literal form. She was the little MAGA girl, an anomaly in the system, a glitch in the school's progressive matrix. She felt the stares burning her back. They weren't looks of childish curiosity. They were looks of superior moral judgment. They were the looks of the tolerance that tolerated everything except a diverging opinion. Passing the social studies classroom, she heard the voice of Mr. Harrison, a teacher known more for his political diatribes than for teaching history. "And that is why nationalism is the root of all modern evils." His voice echoed through the open door. Sarah lowered her head. "They are teaching us to hate ourselves," she thought. "They are teaching that loving who we are is wrong." Sarah's vulnerability hit its peak. She didn't have a clique. She didn't have a safe space. Her safe space was her conviction, and it was under siege. She pressed her books against her chest, feeling incredibly small. A 5'3" girl against an entire institution. She reached her locker, number 304. Her hands shook as she spun the combination lock, 32-15-08. The cold metal of the lock contrasted with the heat rising up her neck. As she swapped her books, she noticed a shift in the hallway's sonic atmosphere. The constant murmur diminished, replaced by an expectant, tense silence. It was the silence that precedes thunder, the silence of the savannah when a predator enters the field of view. Out of the corner of her eye, Sarah saw movement. A group was forming about 30 feet away. In the center of them, like a general of a shadow army, was Ethan. Ethan didn't walk, he strutted, with his colorful armband and a latest generation smartphone in hand. Already in recording mode, he exuded the arrogance of someone who believes they hold a monopoly on virtue. He looked at the phone screen, then at Sarah, then at the phone again, laughing with his followers. He was setting the stage. He was prepping the show. Sarah felt her stomach turn violently. She knew who Ethan was, the school's radical leftist, the boy who had made a teacher cry last month because she used the wrong term in class. He destroyed reputations for sport and called it justice. She tried to focus on grabbing her math book. Don't look, don't react, just go to class. But she knew, with a cold dread running down her spine, that she wouldn't make it to the classroom without passing him. The trap was set. The little MAGA girl had been spotted by the wolf, and there was nowhere to hide. She closed the locker door slowly. The click of the metal sounded like a final gong. She turned, and for the first time that morning, her eyes met Ethan's. He smiled. Not a smile of joy, but a predatory grin. He raised the phone, pointing the black lens directly at her face like the barrel of a digital gun. The exposure was complete. The setting was defined. The victim was isolated, and the aggressor was ready to strike. The silence that had momentarily settled in the hallway was broken not by a scream, but by the sharp digital chirp of a recording starting. Ethan advanced, breaking the invisible barrier of Sarah's personal space with the aggressiveness of someone who feels protected by a distorted superior morality. The camera lens of his smartphone was inches from the girl's face, capturing every pore, every tremor of her lips, turning her private anguish into public entertainment for the digital mob. He didn't see a classmate. He saw viral content, a target to be destroyed in the name of social justice. The circle of students closed in quickly, blocking the exits, creating a claustrophobic arena where the air seemed thin, sucked away by the voracity of a crowd thirsty for a moral lynching. "Ladies and gentlemen, look what we have here in our progressive hallway." Ethan's voice sounded theatrical, projected for the audience around him and the invisible followers online. He panned the phone, framing Sarah's t-shirt with palpable contempt. In the middle of an election year, in the middle of the fight for minority rights, we have this display of blatant hate. Sarah, do you have any notion of what this image represents? Do you have any idea of the violence you are perpetuating by wearing this trash? Sarah took a step back, her back colliding with the cold metal of the lockers. The dull thud reverberated in her spine, reminding her there was nowhere to run. Her heart beat so hard it felt like it wanted to tear through her chest, competing with Ethan's strident voice. She gripped her book so tightly her knuckles turned white. She wanted to disappear, to merge with the wall, but the red recording light of Ethan's phone kept her trapped in that nightmare. I'm just wearing a shirt," Sarah stammered, her voice coming out thin and fragile, almost inaudible under the rising buzz of laughter and snide comments from the other students. "It's the president. I have the right to support whoever I want. My parents voted for him. I like him. I'm not hurting anyone." Sarah's answer, simple and honest, acted like gasoline on the bonfire of Ethan's indignation. He let out an incredulous, performative laugh, shaking his head as if dealing with a child incapable of logical reasoning. He took another step forward, invading her space even more, using his height to physically intimidate her while maintaining the posture of an offended victim. "Not hurting anyone," Ethan repeated, raising his voice, twisting her words for the crowd. "Did you hear that? Ignorance is bliss, isn't it? Your president is a symbol of systemic oppression. By wearing that shirt, you are literally silencing all the marginalized voices in this school. You are saying you support racism, xenophobia, the patriarchy. Your right ends where our safe existence begins, and your presence with that fascist propaganda on your chest makes this space unsafe for all of us." The circular logic and academic buzzwords thrown like stones confused Sarah. She wasn't racist. She loved her country. She went to church, helped in the community. How could this boy accuse her of such terrible things just because of a smiling picture of Donald Trump? The weight of the accusations was crushing. Around her, the other students, conditioned by the same rhetoric, began to echo Ethan's words. "Take it off!" someone shouted from the back. "Fascist!" hissed a girl with political stickers on her backpack. "Shame!" others chanted, turning the hallway into a kangaroo court where the verdict had been delivered before the trial even began. Sarah felt hot tears start to well up, burning her eyes. She tried to hold them back, remembering the strength she admired in the rallies she saw on TV, but the psychological pressure of being hated by dozens of people simultaneously was too much for a 14-year-old girl. "Please, Ethan, let me pass," she pleaded, her voice choked by imminent crying. She tried to move to the left, but Ethan blocked the path with his body, keeping the phone fixed on her face. He was savoring the moment. Her fear was his fuel. Her tears were proof of his ideological victory. "You're not going anywhere until you understand the harm you're causing," he decreed, assuming the role of judge and jailer. "You think you can come here, rub this privilege in our faces, and then go to math class like nothing happened? No. We demand accountability. You need to apologize now. Apologize to the camera. Apologize for promoting hate. The demand hung in the air, heavy and humiliating. He wanted her to kneel, metaphorically and perhaps even literally. He wanted her to renounce her beliefs, to betray her family's values, to satisfy the power thirst of that indoctrinated mob. Sarah looked around, seeking a look of compassion, a teacher, a friend, anyone. But she saw only phone screens. Dozens of black lenses pointed at her, broadcasting her humiliation live. She was alone, completely devastatingly alone. The educational system, which was supposed to protect her, had created these monsters that were now devouring her. "I won't apologize for loving America," Sarah whispered, a last spark of resistance shining amidst the despair. It was an act of monumental bravery, spoken with a trembling voice, but audible enough to be picked up by Ethan's microphone. Ethan's expression hardened. Her refusal to submit, to accept his narrative, enraged him. The mask of the tolerant educator slipped, revealing the raw face of ideological tyranny. "Loving America." He spat the words with disgust. "Your America is a lie. Your America is dead, and we're going to make sure it stays buried. You and people like you are the cancer preventing progress. If you don't have the shame to take that shirt off on your own, maybe we have to teach you a lesson about social consequences. No one wants you here, Sarah. No one wants your hate here. You are a pariah." He gestured to the crowd, inciting them. The circle tightened even further. The noise increased, turning into a sonic mass of boos and insults. Sarah shrank against the locker, hugging her knees, sliding down to the floor. She covered her face with her hands, sobbing openly now, her dignity shattered by collective cruelty. The image of Donald Trump on her t-shirt was crumpled, hidden by her arms, as if the flag itself were being lowered under enemy attack. The scene was one of brutal psychological violence, an innocent girl reduced to an emotional rag, surrounded by youths who believed they were saving the world while destroying a life. Ethan brought the camera even closer, filming the top of the crying girl's head, narrating his victory for the viewers. "See," he said, triumphant, "this is what happens when we confront fascism. They cry, they play the victim, but we will not back down." Sarah's despair hit rock bottom. She felt there was no hope. The world was cold, hostile, and unfair. The radical left had won. They had the strength, the numbers, the narrative. She was just a girl in a t-shirt. Who could save her against this overwhelming tide? Who would dare face this collective fury? In that moment of absolute darkness, where the light of liberty seemed to have been extinguished in the hallway of Lincoln High, destiny was preparing an intervention that no one there, especially Ethan, could predict. Chaos was at its peak, injustice reigned supreme, and the stage was set for a clash of realities. Ethan's triumph seemed absolute and irreversible in that instant of unbridled cruelty. With Sarah sobbing at his feet, curled up against the metal lockers like a wounded animal, the young activist felt the intoxicating power of total control. The crowd around them, mesmerized by the spectacle of moral destruction, kept their phones raised, forming a wall of digital lights that blinded any hope of rescue. Ethan, not satisfied with just the girl's tears, decided to deliver the coup de grace, the final act that would consecrate his position as the Grand Inquisitor of social justice at Lincoln High. He lowered the arm holding the phone, bringing the lens inches from Sarah's wet face, and extended his other hand toward her shoulder in an invasive gesture, intending to force her to lift her head and look at the camera so the world could see the defeat of fascism in a child's eyes. "Look at the camera, Sarah," he ordered, his voice distilling contempt. "Tell everyone you were wrong. Say that your patriotism is a mistake. Come on. Confess, and maybe we'll let you go." But before Ethan's fingers could touch the fabric of that patriotic T-shirt, before the final humiliation could be consummated, a strange and dissonant sound cut through the stuffy air of the hallway. It wasn't a scream, nor a school bell, nor the notification sound of an app. It was something organic, heavy and rhythmic, a sound that evoked old wood colliding with authority against the modern synthetic floor. Thud, thud, thud. The noise was dry, like the banging of a judge's gavel, and carried a gravity that instantly paralyzed the students closest to the main entrance. The rhythm of the beat was slow but relentless, approaching like an inevitable storm. Curiosity overcame malice for a second, and heads began to turn, diverting from the drama on the floor to the figure emerging from the shadows of the entrance lobby. The morning light, streaming through the glass doors behind him, created an imposing silhouette, cut in gold and forgotten glory. When the figure entered the focus of the hallway's fluorescent light, the contrast with the sterile, colorful modernity of the school was shocking. It was Major Arthur Miller. At 96 years old, he didn't walk with the lightness of youth, but advanced with the tectonic determination of someone who has already marched through hell and returned. He wore his full dress uniform, an impeccable olive drab that seemed not to have aged a single day, fitted perfectly to his still broad shoulders. On his left chest, above the heart, a constellation of medals shone with an intensity that outshone the smartphone screens. The Silver Star, the Purple Heart, the European, African, Middle Eastern Campaign Medal. Each piece of metal told a story of blood, mud, and supreme sacrifice. He held a polished oak cane, but he didn't lean on it like an invalid. He wielded it like a scepter of command, an extension of his iron will. The Major stopped 10 feet from the circle. His eyes, a pale and piercing blue, swept the scene with the precision of a sniper assessing the battlefield. He saw the young faces distorted by conditioned hate. He saw the lenses pointed like weapons. And, in the center of the vortex, he saw little Sarah, the little MAGA girl, trembling with fear under the shadow of the aggressor. The anger that rose up the veteran's neck wasn't Ethan's hysterical fury, but the cold, righteous wrath of a protector. "Step away from her!" Major Miller's voice exploded in the hallway, not as a request but as a military order. Projected from the diaphragm, with a potency that defied his advanced age. The sound reverberated off the metal walls, causing several students to instinctively take a step back, lowering their phones. Ethan, caught off guard by the interruption of his moment of glory, spun on his heels, his face shifting from arrogance to confusion. Who are you?" Ethan stammered, trying to regain control of the situation, the phone camera now wavering uncertainly between the girl and the old soldier. "This is a student matter. You can't interrupt a protest against hate speech. We are creating a safe space." The Major took a step forward, the thud of the cane sounding like a warning shot. He ignored Ethan's question as if it were the buzzing of a fly and focused directly on the boy's soul. "Safe space?" the Major repeated, his voice loaded with cutting sarcasm. "You call this a safe space, surrounding an unarmed girl, terrorizing a child to tears because she dares to think differently than you? Son, I landed on Omaha Beach with the water dyed red by the blood of my brothers. I froze in the forest of the Ardennes while Nazi artillery tried to wipe us off the face of the earth. We fought to create a safe space, safe for freedom, safe so that even an ungrateful, insolent punk like you would have the right to speak your nonsense without being dragged to a gulag." The silence that followed was absolute. The mention of the visceral reality of war, coming from a living witness, pierced the theoretical bubble in which those students lived. Ethan, however, feeling his stage crumble, tried to counterattack with the only weapons he knew: labels. "You don't understand," Ethan shouted, his voice cracking, trying to rally the crowd again. "You're part of the problem. You represent the imperialist patriarchy. This girl is wearing a fascist symbol. She is promoting intolerance. We do not tolerate the intolerant." Major Miller let out a short, dry, humorless laugh, shaking his head slowly. He moved closer, standing face to face with Ethan. The height difference was minimal, but the difference in moral stature was abysmal. The veteran pointed the cane at Ethan's chest, not touching him, but holding it firm in the air, like an insurmountable barrier. "You use that word, fascist, as if you know the taste of it," the major said, lowering his tone to a dangerous whisper that everyone leaned in to hear. "I looked into the eyes of true fascism, son. Fascism isn't a girl wearing a shirt of a democratically elected president. Fascism is the suppression of dissent by force and fear. Fascism is the demand for total conformity. Fascism is a group of brown shirts, or in your case, designer hoodies, surrounding the weak to impose their ideology. Look at what you are doing. Look at her." The major pointed a gloved hand at Sarah, who had stopped crying and was looking at him with wide eyes, as if seeing an avenging angel. "You are the one acting like the monster you claim to fight," the major sentenced. "You dress yourself in virtue, but your actions reek of tyranny. You shame the freedom that my comrades and I bought with our lives and our limbs. You aren't a social justice warrior. You're just a bully with a sophisticated vocabulary." The truth of the words hit Ethan like a physical punch. Around them, the audience began to dissolve. Phones were lowered and tucked into pockets. Shame, an emotion that rarely visited that group, began to settle in. They realized, under the harsh light of that war hero, how cowardly they looked. The narrative had flipped. Ethan looked to the sides, seeking support, but found only averted gazes. He was alone on the stage he had built himself. Morally defeated, stripped of his armor of superiority, Ethan retreated. But the arrogance of the radical left doesn't accept defeat easily. He needed to have the last word, even if it was an empty threat. This isn't over," Ethan hissed, pocketing his phone with trembling hands, trying to maintain a posture of defiance. "I'm going to report this to the administration. You are intimidating a student. You are violating school policies. You're going to get cancelled, Grandpa. The internet will know who you are." "Let them know," Major Miller replied, impassive, lifting his chin with dignity. "My name is Major Arthur Miller, Easy Company. My record is in the history books, not on Twitter. Go make your report, but get out of my face before I forget I'm a gentleman and treat you like the enemy you pretend to be." Ethan opened his mouth to reply, but the veteran's steely gaze silenced him. With a huff of frustration and impotence, the activist turned his back and marched hurriedly down the hall, disappearing around the corner, taking with him the toxicity that had poisoned the environment. The tension dissipated like smoke in the wind. The major sighed, the weight of age returning to his shoulders for a moment, now that combat had ceased. He turned slowly to Sarah. The girl was still on the floor, holding her books like a shield, looking at him with admiration and disbelief. The warrior's severe face softened instantly, transforming into the gentle expression of a grandfather. He leaned his cane on his arm and extended a gloved hand to her. "It's all right now, little patriot," he said with a soft and comforting voice. "The enemy has retreated. You can stand up. On American soil, we do not crawl before tyrants." Sarah held the veteran's firm hand. His skin was rough, calloused, but transmitted a security she had never felt before. With a gentle but firm pull, he helped her to her feet. "Thank you. Thank you, sir," Sarah whispered, wiping her tears with the back of her hand. I thought I was alone." The major took an immaculate white linen handkerchief from his pocket and offered it to her. "You are never alone, my dear," he said, looking deeply into her eyes. "As long as there is one of us breathing, the real America will be by your side. They can scream, they can threaten, they can control the schools and the screens. But they don't have what you have. They don't have honor, and honor is the only thing that lasts when the dust settles. There was still tension in the air. The other students' glances were still cautious, and Ethan's threat to involve the administration hung like a black cloud on the horizon. The battle in the hallway had been won, but the culture war was far from over. However, there, in that sacred moment of connection between the heroic past and the hopeful future, Sarah straightened her t-shirt, smoothing Trump's face over her chest. She was no longer just wearing an outfit, she was wearing a legacy, and with Major Miller by her side, she felt ready to face whatever came next. The electric tension that previously saturated the hallway of Lincoln High dissipated, replaced by a reverent stillness. Where before there were sneering laughs and the cold glow of cell phones hungry for scandal, now there was only the rhythmic and comforting sound of Major Miller's cane marking time on the linoleum. Thud, thud, thud. That sound wasn't just wood against the floor. It was the heartbeat of old America reaffirming its presence. Sarah walked beside him, no longer hunched over, no longer trying to hide the print on her t-shirt. For the first time that morning, she felt that Donald Trump's face on her chest was not a target, but a shield of honor, validated by the presence of the hero walking beside her. As they advanced toward the classroom, the school principal, Mrs. Higgins, a bureaucrat with thick glasses known for her compliance with the radical left agenda, appeared at the intersection of the hallway, alerted by the commotion and probably by Ethan's hysterical report. She brought with her that air of artificial authority, ready to reprimand the disturbance. However, upon locking eyes with Major Arthur Miller, her words died in her throat. The veteran didn't stop. He only sustained her gaze, a silent exchange that lasted a fraction of a second, but communicated volumes. In those blue eyes weary of war, the principal saw an authority that no school board or ideological guideline could confer. She saw the foundation upon which the school itself was built. Intimidated by the aura of sacrifice and truth emanating from the old soldier, Mrs. Higgins stepped back instinctively, clearing the way. The system, in that moment, bowed before history. "Keep your head up, Sarah," instructed the major, his voice soft but firm, as they passed the last groups of students who now observed with a mix of curiosity and reluctant respect. "Courage is contagious. They tried to isolate you because their fear is seeing someone who doesn't bend. Today, you showed them that freedom is non-negotiable." They reached the door of the history classroom, the final destination of that transformative journey. The major stopped and turned to the girl. Sunlight streamed through a nearby window, illuminating the medals on his chest, making them shine like guiding stars. He looked at her MAGA shirt and smiled, a genuine smile that crinkled the corners of his eyes. "You know, kid," he began, resting both hands on the cane, "many say that my generation saved the world. Maybe we did. But looking at you today, facing that pack alone, with just your faith and your values, I have hope that your generation will be the one to keep it saved. Don't let anyone, ever, tell you that you should be ashamed of loving your country or your leaders. Patriotism isn't hate. Patriotism is the purest form of gratitude." Sarah felt a lump in her throat, but this time it wasn't from sadness, it was from pure emotion and gratitude. She felt taller, stronger. The little MAGA girl had grown years in minutes. "I promise, Major," she said, her voice clear and unwavering. "I will never take this shirt off, and I will never stop speaking my mind." "That is all America asks of you," replied Major Miller. He then did something that left the students in the hallway open-mouthed. The old officer straightened his posture, ignoring the pain of age, and rendered a slow, perfect, respectful salute to the 14-year-old girl. It wasn't a formal military salute to a superior. It was a recognition of equal to equal, from an ancient warrior to a new cultural warrior. Sarah smiled, a radiant smile that lit up the somber hallway. She nodded, turned, and entered the classroom. As she crossed the threshold, the atmosphere in the room changed. The teacher stopped speaking. The students raised their eyes. But Sarah didn't run to her desk in the back of the room. She walked with firm steps down the center aisle, the Trump print visible, defiant, and proud. She sat in the front row, placed her books on the desk, and looked forward, ready to learn, but also ready to teach by example. She knew Ethan and his crew would still be around, plotting, tweeting, trying to cancel. But their power had been broken. The spell of fear had been dissolved by the light of truth. Outside, Major Miller walked toward the school exit. Passing the flagpole in the front courtyard, he paused for a moment. The American flag, Old Glory, fluttered vigorously against the blue sky, its red and white stripes shining in the sun. He looked at it, and then looked back at the window of the classroom where Sarah was. "There's still fight in these bones," he murmured to himself with a glint of satisfaction in his eyes. "And as long as there are children like her, America will never fall." The veteran adjusted his cap and went on his way, leaving behind not just a school in reflective silence, but a seed of hope planted in the heart of a generation. Justice had triumphed, not by the force of imposition, but by the resilience of the human spirit and the unbreakable alliance between tradition and the future. Freedom of speech had defeated silencing, and the little MAGA girl was finally safe in her own homeland.